So we've reached the bottom of the hour, and I'd like to go ahead and get started and welcome you to the next installment of our 30-minute workout series. My name is Alan Gilbert. I'm a technical specialist here at Autodesk. Joining me behind the curtain for Q&A during the session will be Angel Espinosa, as well as Jeff and Jerry Bartles. So please enter your question into the Q&A pane as you have them. Today's session will be on entering property descriptions and other record data into Civil 3D. We'd like to welcome you back if you're a frequent visitor. If not, if this is your first time, just going to let you know what this concept is all about, the 30-minute workout. Traditional courses that you may take, teach you what you need to know to do your job. And while that's great, there's a lot of holes you need to fill during the process of you learning the software. And that's really what these sessions are all about, tips and tricks and other maybe not so obvious tools that can strengthen your learning curve. Some ground rules for today. Some of the examples we give are realistic, some are not. It depends how we want to get our point across. And again, our goal is always to make it as easy to understand as possible. And to that goal, sometimes we use more abstract examples. We start and end on time, 30 minutes. These sessions are recorded, so we'll send out the recording afterwards. And a reminder to please place your questions in the Q&A pane as we go if you have a question on something that you've seen. And with that said, let's get going. The agenda for today, we're going to take a look at the main project we're going to be working on, example project. We're trying to recreate a boundary along a state right-of-way where they're adding right-of-way or acquiring right-of-way for a project. And to that end, we're going to look at several ways to enter property description data. And a lot of you probably do this already, and there's so many different ways. I can't cover them all in 30 minutes for sure. But I wanted to give some real-world examples of how you can kind of put them together, combine them, and use several things together, because that's really what I end up doing a lot of times on this type of boundary work. So we'll do some cogo input when we're tying the location down to stationing, because that happens so often where we're dealing or we've got boundary work tied to centerline stationing, and we have no other ties or reference to any other control points or anything like that. And we'll use the traverse editor, our traditional tabular input, to create a boundary from multiple sources. And then we'll even show some Polyline input with some of our transparent tools. And then if we have time, we'll do a little boundary example where we show how the traverse editor can help us when we're moving things around. But that'll make more sense when we get there. So I'm going to jump over first to the tour, the first agenda item. This is a set of right-of-way plans for a State Department of Transportation. I just randomly pulled these off the web, so if you worked on this project, I apologize. But the area we're going to be looking at here is lot 322. So this is a right-of-way expansion on this project. You can see there's a jog in it as well. And so lot 322 is going to be affected. If I want to rebuild the boundary here along this new take or right-of-way take, I'm going to have to use stationing to recreate that, because you can see the endpoints of this are tied to station and offset. And then because I've pulled the plat also for lot 322, I'll show you that here. We can use that to fill in the gaps for the meets and bounds descriptions. Okay, so let's start with that. So here I'm in Civil 3D. I've got a coordinate system for state plane located in the drawing. I'm not going to show that. And I actually have from either survey or from maybe an as-built, I have a center line alignment, that center line that we showed. And I'm going to create a reference to that, a data reference in my drawing. And then I'm going to go ahead and turn on my geolocation so I can activate my aerial map. And while that's popping up, I just want to jump back here. What we're going to do first, we're going to create 3 points. I'm going to use my annotation here, my spotlight. We're going to create this corner here, which is actually on the ground. We're going to create this new corner that's created from the right-of-way acquisition, as well as this new corner along the new acquired right-of-way. So that's what we're doing first. So here we go. Here is that house that you saw. That's lot 322. And I'm going to read right off the plans. I'm not going to pop them on screen just to save real estate here. but we're going to use the cogo method. So I'm going to go up to Home and Points, Alignments, and Station Offset. It asks me for the alignment because we need stationing. And now I'm going to input the station and offset of those 3 points. So 93, 74, 65, 52. We're going to enter. The offset is to the left. Our stationing is running left to right, so that'll be a left offset, and it was 89, so minus 89.75. And we're not going to put a description or an elevation. Now we're ready for the next key in. So I'm going to take that second point that we showed on screen. 937454.71, and then we're going to do a minus 55 offset. No description or elevation. And then last, we're going to do 937309.33, enter, negative 55 also. Enter for no elevation description, escape to finish. So again, now we have this point, and this point from our right-of-way stationing, assuming that this is locked down and in good shape. But now I need to enter what I don't know about this lot. So that comes back, if you go back to the boundary, this is the point we know, the point we have in the ground, this pipe. So we need to enter this front boundary, meets and bounds. You can see the direction distance, as well as this sideline. So we need those from the plat or the deed. And we have those there. So let's enter those. Easiest way to enter that type of data usually is the Traverse editor. Now you can do it with the transparent tools that we'll see later and a few other ways. You could keep going with the cogo tool. Cogo will let you do direction and distance. But you know what? Let's just lay it out in a nice tabular fashion. So on the Home tab, we're going to go to Traverse Editor. And we're going to start by occupying point 1. And to do that, I can just type in 1 and I hit the Tab key. And that's done. And now we're going to leave here and we're going to put in that meets and bounds description across the front of that lot, which was on the plat. And I had to reverse the direction because it was and go in the other direction, but it's north 3 degrees, 51 minutes. 44 seconds east. We hit the Tab key, and the distance was 90.01 feet. The Traverse Editor shows us graphics. Notice here, I'm only plotting or drawing lines. So the result of this will be a polyline and a file that I can save for later if I would like. So let's go to that next course that goes back. And that course was South 87, 3805 West, tab. That'll be 159.95. And I'm going to turn the zoom off, no zoom, just so we can see the lot better. Okay, so now I just need to jump down to this point, which this point we think is good because of our right-of-way reference. So instead of line here, I'm going to flip this to point, and I'm going to say go to point 3 and hit tab. So it will traverse up to that point. Okay, next I have a call from here to here. Now that is actually along a curve here. You can see that's parallel to the right-of-way. So we need to enter a curve. Well, I've got the chord direction already, right? That is the chord direction from 3 to 2. So let's use a chord arc. And then for the direction or the angle, I want to use points to derive that. Now, with this said, there's a ton of shortcuts available to enter angle and distance. If you go to the help file here, it's a great resource for all the different ways you can input. Like you can input meters or M and it will convert it to feet. You can even input chains. I could put 20C with no spaces. That'll be 20 chains or 1/4 of a mile. And I can put rods and lengths as well. So there's tons of ways to input. But one of the little tricks here is to go point to point, as I'll say, from where I'm leaving 3, triple dot, 1, 2, 3 to 2. That's the angle I want for the chord direction. The distance is the same thing, 3 dot 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 2. Then I hit the tab key. Now I know the radius because I know the radius of this curve. And so I compute that radius is 670 feet. I'm going to hit tab. Now this looks great. The only problem is our direction is flipped. Our delta angle is in the wrong spot. So what we do here is we go down to our delta angle. Notice the italicized shows that it's computed. And I want to put a minus sign and hit the tab key. That flips the delta angle to this side or to this side. And now it's in the appropriate orientation. And then to go back to the beginning of the POB of this particular boundary that I'm making, I want to just say point. And we're going to go back to point 1. Hit the tab key. And we jump back to 1. So this is nice. I can save this as a traverse. 30-minute. It's a TRV. It's just a text file. And I can open that later. Now in my settings, I can control what's left behind. And I just said, leave me a polyline. So when I close this, I have a nice polyline that I can use for a variety of reasons. Whether that's alignment, parcel, you name it. Let's take a look. Let's go back to the right-of-way map. So that was using the cogo method and then the traverse editor. But notice, what if we had to do a little work here? We're working with an owner in this area. You see lot 346. We've got some right-of-way coming here, new right-of-way. You can see where it says 45 feet, and it has a station tie as well. If I look down in the plans, you can see, I'll just look at it quickly here. You can see where this road continues here, or this new right-of-way, here it is here, this bottom, continuing. So it starts in an arc and then goes into a long tangent. So there we go. So I want to build that quickly, and let's use a different method. How about just a classic polyline? So I'm going to use a polyline. That's what's great about the transparent tools over on the right, is they can be used by pretty much any element. So if I say create a polyline, where do I want to start? Well, I need to start at a station offset because that's what I had to begin that new right-of-way. If I look here on the transparent tools, there's one called station offset, which you can key in with a apostrophe SO. I'm going to click that. It asks me to select the alignment. And now it asks for the stationing. So the stationing there is 937614.84. And the offset is to the right. Now we're on the right of this alignment as we're going forward. And it was a 45-foot positive offset to the right. You can see the dot. Now the transparent tool is continuing to want more station and offset, but I don't need that now. I need to deal with my polyline a bit. So I'm going to hit escape one time. Now my polyline is trying to continue, but I'm an arc. So I need to change this to arc. Okay, so we've got an arc on the cursor. I know the radius. I'm going to click radius, and we're going to type in our radius, which is 715. There we go. So it's hard to see, but we have that very flat radius here on the cursor. And now I'm going to do a station offset to the PT of the parallel alignments. I'm going to type apostrophe SO for station offset. That's just a shortcut. The stationing, I can click it in this case, just to make it easier. Pick that to PT. And the offset was still 45. So there's my arc. I'm going to escape one time to get out of the transparent tool. Now I'm trying to continue an arc, so I need to go to line. And now I just want to run out this line along the same distance as this parallel tangent. So what I'm going to do is click on length. So it'll be tangent. And the length of the line, I'm just going to say apostrophe SO again. And I'm going to just snap to the end of this alignment here. And then for the offset, again, is 45. And escape to stop the polyline. And now I have some nice geometry that I could use to create an alignment from object. So this is tangent geometry. So I could go straight here to create alignment from objects, and I would have a nice alignment representing that new right-of-way. Okay, so we do have time for the bonus today, which I thought we would, but I never know, so I don't trust myself. But we're going to jump to another drawing. Okay, and so if you look at the cursor, my running coordinates here, this is down around the origin or 0. This is basically polylines, and these are all, this is 1 mile by 1 mile by 1 mile. And it's splits. You can see the half-mile points. And what this represents in Alabama, we have the rectangular planar system for all of our property is reference to that, the public land survey system. And so I just drew a quick 1 mile by 1 mile to do some of my calcs for my boundary work. Okay, I have a coordinate system. If I look at the drawing, it's State Plane, Alabama West. That's what I wanted. And I have a single little cogo point down here, which is a railroad spike. So my property or my deed calls out a railroad spike at the southwest corner of this section. So this is a 1 mile section here. And so what we're going to do, we're going to take a look here, go back to this side, and this is our deed. And what we're going to do is we're going to start at that railroad spike you can see here, and we're going to create these 3 calls that go up to where our boundary starts. They're called commencing calls. If you're not familiar with these type of, it's basically how to get to my point of beginning of the property, or commencing calls. We're going to draw these in using the Traverse editor. All right, so let's do that. We're going to go to the Traverse editor. And that point down there to occupy was 0.1. So I'm just going to type, remember, 0.1 tab. And now I want to put in the first course of my commencing call. And so I wouldn't have to flip back and forth. I just wrote it down separately. So that's going to be South 87, 38, 47 East. And we're going to go 26, 40, 88. So we're going half a mile. So this is a long tie for our property boundary. So it's going to go all the way to where that should be, right? So we've got, this is the direction of north is a little bit different because I use this assumed CAD north, basically. So we don't have to worry about that now. The next call was the same exact direction, 87, 38, 47 east. And we went another 1,275 feet. Remember, I just have lines turned on here. I don't want to draw points in this case. And then the last call to get all the way up to the POB was north 00, 33, 47 east. And we're going to go 2,865 feet, 2,900s. Okay, so my property is starting well up here, and that's great. So what I can do, remember, this store that it's beginning from cogo point number 1. So that's important. I didn't have to do that. I could have clicked this picker here and just selected a coordinate in the file, and it would always stay with that coordinate. But I'm telling this, you're going with 0.1 no matter what. So let's save this Traverse. And I'll just name that 30-minute. And we'll call this commencing to distinguish from that other. Okay, and remember, when I close this, I'm going to be left with just the Polyline data. And there we have. So that's a nice Polyline for those commencing calls. But just for reference, I want to just pop in that deed. So I had 4 corners on this particular deed. I've already entered it. So I'm going to go and pick, it's called Traverse or Deed Float Traverse. I'm going to open that. And notice that it pops in at the end, just like it should. Now I'm going to close this. I don't care now, just wanted the line work. Discard changes. And there's my boundary or my property. So we have a rotation issue, right? But what I'm trying to do here is I want to take this data up to state plane. So I'm trying to move this or transform it into my state plane coordinate system. Now, normally I would go monument to monument and all that, but we're going to freehand it here just to show you an example of what you can do. So before they do that, I'm just going to delete the Polyline for the commencing calls because that has no tie back to the Traverse. It's just a line, and we'll leave that in. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to split my screen. And I want to go to Geolocation and turn my aerial map on. Remember, I'm down around the origin, and this is a state plane drawing. And let's start with roads. It'll be easier to find where we are. Take that a second to pop in. So there's my Alabama State Plane West coverage. And we're going to drop in here to the job right in this area. And now I'm going to turn the image on because I know where this is. And what I know is that railroad spot, point number 1 in the real world, is in the middle of this road here, right at the end of this fence line, because we've been there before, right? And so what I'd like to do, just to move this up for geospatial purposes, to move this up into state plane, I'm going to grab all this data, including the cogo point. That's very important. Okay, the line work, this is just dumb line work, but I have a cogo point in there, and I'm going to move. Type in move. I'm going to move from that cogo point. Click in the other view, and I'm going to drop it at the end, right where that railroad spike is, roughly. Again, if you were transforming for real, you would already have a survey point or monument out there that you would snap this to. But again, we're just roughing this in for now. Okay, so now let's turn off my two views. And let's take a look. So that overlaid nicely. You can see the boundary. Again, we have a rotation issue. So we need, and there are two different rotations issues. This dummy box has its own rotation issues, but more importantly, our boundary needs to be rotated. But not worried about that now. We're trying to say, how can the traverse editor command help us move our data up into the correct coordinates? So now point 1 is up here. So if I go to the traverse command, traverse editor, oops, move that out of the way. And I'm going to go open. And remember, we called that 30-minute commence, those 3 commencing calls. We're going to hit open and notice what happens. As soon as I hit open, that traverse says, you know what? I ride with point 1. I go wherever point 1 is because that's my starting point. And so now if you look at my running coordinates on the bottom of my screen, you can see I'm up in the 2 million, 1 million, 1.7 million. So I'm in state plane, even though this traverse was created down at the origin. So that's a really nice feature that allow you to, I mean, it opens the door for a lot of things. I could put a cogo point on the end here, same thing for the boundary, and that boundary would go with that as well. Because if I open that boundary now, if I was to open that same deed that was popped in here, it's not going to pop in here because its reference was a coordinate in space, which was down around the origin. So it's going to be way down there out of the way. But if I had put a cogo point here and assigned that starting point to the actual property boundary, the closed shape, it would also ride with that cogo point when I moved it up. So this can help you with move, rotations, any type of transform that you're doing. Okay, let's go back here to the slideshow. So just to review, we took a look at cogo point input. We did the centerline stationing where we're referencing the centerline stationing. And that's how we put those in. But remember that cogo command has tons of other layout methods. I can lay out full boundaries just with points if I don't want to do lines as I go. The next thing we looked at was, okay, I've got my centerline stationing tied down cogo points here. But then I've got some meets and bounds data that I need to combine with it. And that traverse editor is a great way to put all that together. I'm taking data that was put in from a variety of methods to build my final boundary. Next, we just did some classic polyline creation. And we used the transparent tools to go and locate those points. We did station offset, but again, within the transparent tools, you can do northern, easting, latitude, longitude, and so on. And then last, we took a look at letting the traverse editor command move your boundary for you, basically. So if I reference a traverse to a cogo point, it's going to ride with that cogo point wherever it is and let you move it or rotate it up into space. So that concludes today's session. Please let us know if you have any questions.
Alan, we did have just 2 quick things, if you could address them real fast.
Sure.
We had one individual was curious as to whether or not the traverse editor could provide closure calculations for the parcel once that is entered in.
Yep. Great question. That is totally part of that command. So just underneath the pull down for the traverse editor is the boundary adjustment command. So if I'm trying to check closure on some deed data, it's built right in, and I can take it too. There's a button even from the traverse. I can load it straight into that command from the traverse editor screen. It's a little button that looks like a balance. So I can go and do a traditional latitude and departure correction.
Fantastic. The other one that we had outstanding was whether or not the traverse that is created, if that's dynamically linked to the alignment. I don't believe it was, because the way you created it was stations and offsets.
That's right.
So there wasn't necessarily a tie back to it. Is there a way to create a traverse that is dynamically linked to the alignment?
Not really, other than just if you had cogo, smart points along the way.
Okay.
If you kind of the way I connected and moved that traverse. So yeah, and that's really the only way to have that route along.
Okay. That catches us up. Thank you.
Yep. Well, thanks everyone for your time today, and we hope to see you in 2 weeks at our next session. Thanks so much.